2003, Scott Russel Hill has been gaining worldwide attention as a psychic detective on the television series Sensing Murder. Some of the episodes featuring Scott have been shown on Channel 10, TV2 in New Zealand and Living TV in the UK. More than just a psychic detective, Scott is Australia's best-selling spiritual author and has just completed his 5th book, which will be on the shelves this October, about his Sensing Murder experiences and his efforts to solve some of this country's most notorious murder cases. He joins us today on Ghost Radio to talk a bit about that and give us a bit of a re-education about ghosts and spooks. Hello, Scott.
Hi, Dan. A re-education?
Yes, a re-education.
In what way?
Well, Hollywood has been, putting out this kind of stuff with Medium and Ghost Whisperer. And
if only it was that easy.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If only if it was that easy. So I think that you really need to re-educate people as to what it's really like.
Well, it was interesting because I saw an episode of Ghost Whisperer recently. Not that it's a show that I'm able to see all the time, nor do I particularly like it, because if we could just talk to ghosts like regular people, and there was this episode I was watching. Is it what's the girl's name? I always it was
Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Jennifer Love Hewitt. I knew there was 3 names in there somewhere. She's standing in her bedroom having this full-on conversation with this ghost who's going into intricate details and explanation of why he's hanging around her and why he's got tattoos and what it all means. And I watched that and just thought, geez, if only it was that easy, because the truth of it is that, I guess a bit more towards how the Alison Dubois character is portrayed in Medium by Patricia Arquette, that's a little bit more realistic, where you pick up bits and pieces where you are confused and don't always know exactly what's going on. I mean, people in spirit will show you signs and symbols and messages. Sometimes they'll say a word, sometimes they'll have 3 words together. Sometimes I liken it to when you're on a mobile phone and you're having a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden their signal breaks up and you say to them, listen, you're breaking up, I can't understand what you're saying. That's a lot of the time what it's all about. Do you remember the TV show that was on last year, and it's just been commissioned for a 2nd series, a British show called Afterlife?
Yes, I remember it well. I like that one.
That's the most realistic version of what it's like talking to dead people. That's the show that is, in truth, the most realistic and accurate, and the most accurate portrayal as to what it's like for a medium to speak to a dead person, where she's just picking up on signs and symbology and may have a person, in spirit in front of her, but absolutely not know what they're standing there for. So it really is about putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and it's not just about banging on the door of spirit and asking them to give you a complete sentence, because 9.5 times out of 10, that just isn't what happens.
How about on Medium, when you see a whole lot of ghosts standing around a bed, is that at all realistic?
That's very realistic, but again, the communication is the issue. It's happening to me, from the time I was 7 years old, just after I drowned, when all this stuff started. And as a little kid, I had lots of people standing around my bed wearing quite old-fashioned garments, as I remembered. I thought, gee, they're not even from this century, they're from the 18th century or something. And I actually figured out that they were members of my family from my own family tree. But it took me a few years to figure out who they were, because they never said anything.
Ah.
So that's the thing. People, yes, can stand around your bed in groups or stand in your living room in groups. It still doesn't mean they talk to you, though, Dan. And that's the biggest problem. You can be looking right at them going, well, what do you want? And they just smile. You go, So you got to, sometimes it's time, sometimes it happens immediately. Sometimes I will instinctively know what they want. Working as a psychic detective and dealing with ghosts, it happens on so many different levels. And I guess, again, I can only liken it to when you're trying to communicate and get a message through to a really little kid who's 3 years old, how they communicate to you and how an older person would respond is hopefully different. You may have a longer conversation with somebody who's older that you're trying to get the same message to. So people in spirit are the same, regardless of their age. The level of what comes across in the message they give is always and ultimately different.
That's really interesting. You mentioned that you think that you had people from your family standing around your bed when you're a younger kid. Mm-hmm. Have you ever managed to contact anybody from, that you've loved in this lifetime when they've crossed over?
That's a really interesting question, because the answer to that is no. Why that is, I have no idea. My dad's been dead probably 24, 25 years. He died when I was very young. I've been told by other people that he's around me, but that's easy enough to say. Whether it's true or not is another thing. Going on the way that ghosts work, I would assume he's around me because there's no reason why he wouldn't be. My mum's been dead, say, 4 or 5 years. I've never felt her around me, and some very cherished loved ones who have passed as members of my family have never made themselves known to me. So again, why that is, I don't know. Perhaps they're just too busy watching over me while I busy myself helping other people.
Because that's a question that comes up a lot with people. They want to know if their loved ones are around them in spirit.
They always definitely are. There's always 3 major people in spirit that are around you at any one time. And remembering too that because ghosts don't have a physical body, they can be around you and around Aunt Fanny and around Uncle Arthur all at the same time. They don't have to physically be in one location. They're like a radio signal. They are an energy. So they're always around a number of people at any one time, not just you. But there is what we would say 3 main people or 3 main areas of energy that are around all of us at any one time. But we may, like myself with my own family, personally not pick up on that energy. And there's been people who've come to me for readings who are desperate to chat to their mum or dad or someone who's passed. And I say to them, well, they're with you. Even if I don't pick up on them, it's just a natural thing. I say they are with you. Just talk out loud and they'll hear you. The fact that you don't hear them or pick up on the smell of dad's tobacco or mum's perfume or the favourite meal that they used to cook doesn't matter. They will always be around you.
How does synchronicity work in with that? Can you find that people that you love have crossed over around you by looking at synchronicity in your own life?
Sure. Well, I think that when you're standing on a bookcase and your dad's favourite book falls out the bookcase and hits you on the head, that's a pretty good piece of synchronicity.
Has that happened to somebody you know?
No, it's happened to me.
Really?
Just when you're thinking about them, or when you're driving along in your car and you hear mum's favourite song or your best mate's favourite song, or you're thinking about your mate who unfortunately, I'm just using these as examples, who was killed in a car accident, and you're thinking about their old GTS Falcon that they used to drive, and lo and behold, the 20-year-old GTS Falcon passes you at the same time. Those are synchronicities that happen all the time. There are always spiritual synchronicities that remind us about the power of the spirit world and how powerful, our loved ones are. But sometimes, Den, we get so caught up in our day-to-day lives and paying the bills and trying to be the people that we are or that we're not, that we forget the simple spiritual simplicity that surrounds us all, and we don't notice those synchronicities.
Because I've watched you on Sensing Murder and you seem to use synchronicities more than any other psychic detective I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Is that like a special thing for you? It's
something that I just fell into. I mean, after a while, it's again a bit like being hit on the head by the book all the time. I just started to notice, gee, there's that street sign again, or there's that name keeps coming up again. So it was something, I guess, that I just naturally learnt and adapted to. And I think that any of us, wherever our skills are in life, that our path is a constant transition into improving ourselves. And if it is something that you are naturally gifted at doing, whether you're a writer or a drawer or a journalist or a radio person like yourself, or whatever someone's art is, a heart surgeon, I'm sure that there are synchronicities for us all. And the spiritual ones that I've picked up on, it's interesting that a lot of other people don't notice them even when you point it out, because they're just not tuned in on that level.
Just while we're on the subject of synchronicities, I know a lot of people are very connected to the 1111, and you're a numerologist as well. So what are your thoughts about when you just start seeing 1111 coming up in your life?
Yeah, well, I used to think that it was actually a pathway or a key numerical sequence to past life situations, that it basically was like a candle being lit saying, okay, here's 1111, you're about to have some kind of past life recognition. But as time has passed, I found that not to be true. And my opinion at the moment, which may change again in the future because I've had a few different opinions, I think just because the 1111 stands out when you happen to notice it, that we take a little bit more notice of it visually, that we see those 4 strokes and go, oh, that's spooky that I've noticed that. I actually at this moment don't think it's any big deal.
Interesting.
I've gone off the tangent on that a bit. As I said, I may change my mind, but as for it being a link to past life stuff, no, I don't feel that anymore. I've investigated it a few different ways, and I honestly can't link it up to anything. But I think 1111 is just as important as 1010 or 2222 or any of these other sequences. But for some reason, we just tend to notice those 4 single strokes, and not everything means something, and we can make something of it if we want to. And I take my investigations of all things spiritual very seriously. After all, I'm a Scorpio, so we don't take anything lightly, and we are very cynical, to start off with. If I'd found after all these years that I really felt that it did mean something, without making it mean something, I would respond to you differently. But at this stage of my investigations, I think that 1111 is just one of those visual things that we notice and go, ooh, rather than it actually meaning anything.
Well, we'll just take a short break now. I'm talking to Scott Russel Hill. We'll be back in just a moment.
The Greys, the Reptilians, praying mantis beings, and Area 51 employees.
What the hell?
What do they all have in common? They listen to Ghost Radio. Come on over to the other side and prepare to be assimilated.
The idea is to keep the green alien landing craft from taking your humans from the ground and changing them into mutants. A mutant is very dangerous to you because he flies faster than you do and shoots at you.
Welcome back. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about your abilities when you see things and hear things like what you do in Sensing Murder? What do you see and hear? Can you kind of explain that when you actually see a ghost? Is it transparent, say, for instance?
Ghosts appear to me just like regular people, but they're shrouded in a pale blue, spiritual, shimmering light. In the early days when I saw ghosts, yes, they were in some ways translucent or transparent, but now I see them just like regular people.
Have you ever mistaken a ghost for a real person?
Yes, and I wrote about that in my 5th book actually, and I did mention it in one of my earlier books. I was driving home along a freeway one very rainy night through the Adelaide hills about 10 years ago, and I saw a little girl standing on the side of the freeway. I mean, I was doing probably 100 Ks, and you know when something's up ahead and it catches in your headlights on high beam, I thought, what the hell is that? That looked like a little girl, and of course it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and your brain says, well, it can't possibly be a little girl at this time of the night out here in the middle of nowhere, but it was, and I pulled over, and I thought that she was lost, and I got out of the car, and I left the engine idling, and I was saturated, of course. By the time I got out of the car, it was absolutely pelting down with rain. And I walked up to her and I said, are you lost, sweetheart? And as I got closer to her, it was then that I noticed that not only wasn't she wet and that she was completely dry, but then it took me a little while to notice that she was surrounded by this shimmering blue light. It wasn't as perhaps not so strong or so big as what I would normally see. And it took me to get right up to her before I realised, my God, it's not a real person, it's a ghost. And she just looked at me and smiled and disappeared, and I'm left standing on the side of the freeway in the pouring rain. But I did actually eventually find out who she was, and who she was is actually revealed in my 5th book.
And I know that the book's out in October.
September.
Oh, September? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, where can people find your book, by the way?
You can find this book at all bookshops.
Okay. And I know that you've also written a few other books. If people want to get hold of some of your past books, how do they do that?
Well, there's only one of the past ones that are available, and that's the compilation of all the books, which has become Caught Between the Two Worlds, the special edition. So, I mean, that's available through my website, as will the new book will be as well. But I've just struck a new deal with Pan Macmillan Australia, who I was with originally, and because they've got the 5th book, that's why it will be widely available in all the shops as well as my website. But the 4th book, which is just published through me, is only available through me and my website.
Just getting back to having read your book, Scott, you say that... hey?
Which one?
Well, I'm not sure in which one it was, but you talk about...
I'll try and remember.
That you can see auras. That's not a hard question.
Yeah, I guess that's in all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you actually see when you see auras?
Well, Picture a rainbow, and then place that rainbow entirely around the circumference of the person, but not just around the edge. Like if you were standing looking at a person front on, it wouldn't just be like up their arms, over their head and down their other arms. It's completely around the person. And auras reflect the emotions of the person, whether they're angry or sad. And when someone's angry, there'll be a lot of red energy, as far as how I look at them goes, comes off of them. If they're a bit evil or a bit negative, there'll be a very dark, like black colour or grey coloured energy. But then grey can also be associated when somebody is sick, and they'll have colour around the healthy parts of their body, but they'll radiate a real dark area from where there is illness. So it's up for me to interpret what the difference in colours mean, and some colours can mean a couple of different things. So that's where it intuitively is. But the colours radiate out from the person. I always try to think of ways to explain it that regular people would understand. Ever driven along a road in the country, and it's a long straight piece of road, and up ahead you can see like heat rising off the road and it shimmers up?
Yeah.
Well, if we coloured that and then put it around a person, that's what an aura looks like.
Quite spectacular.
It's very nice. And everyone's got one. All living things have got an aura, actually. I mean, plants and boughs of trees and leaves and animals and even little bees and bugs that fly around the place, they've all got auras.
What do you think about those booths that you can go into in, psychic fairs and have an aura photograph?
I actually had one done of myself years ago and had some friends have one done, and the image that came up was actually nothing of what was actually going on around them. So my opinion of those booths is not actually very high.
Maybe they should have a disclaimer on their booth saying, for more accurate results, consult a good psychic.
Yes, I think so.
When you hear something when a ghost is speaking to you, does it come from inside your head or from an outside source?
It can come from both. Yes, it can either come from as if somebody was talking to me, or it can come like right inside my head as if I'm talking to myself, but I hear it in somebody else's voice.
And if you've got a whole lot of spirits speaking to you at the same time, does it get confusing if they're all in your face at once?
Does it get confusing?
Yeah.
That's when you need a stiff drink and a lie down, and a bloody aspirate. It does get very confusing, and it more than gets confusing, then it gets really frustrating because you're sometimes just trying to concentrate on one of the people in spirit that is speaking to you, and you've got all these other ghosts having a chat. And that's when it gets frustrating because they don't, it's not so much they don't care, but they're all so in need of wanting to get their message across that they don't wait their turn. So if you imagine you're working on a switchboard and you've got 20 phone calls coming through all at one time, and you're trying to remember who all the people are, who they want to talk to, who you put on hold, who you're up to, and where they want to be directed to. That's what it's like sometimes when you've got 20 different spooks talking in your head. It's almost an impossible task.
Well, what happened when you started off on Sensing Murder? Did they all just literally show up and kind of bustle their way trying to get your attention?
It started off with one elderly man who was actually the father of a member of the production crew, and he actually died soon after I accepted doing the show. The lady that I was actually dealing with at the time, it was her father, and on the last occasion that I spoke to her, he was alive and well.
Wow, that's amazing.
But he actually died a week later, and he was the first person to visit me, and it didn't take me too long to figure out that it was him. And I rang the production office and I said, this is going to sound really weird, but there's this man that's talking to me in my head, and I think it's the lady's father. I won't say her name because she'd like to keep that rather private. But I said, is there any chance that he's died or that he's very sick? I said, it's either one or the other. And the lady that I was talking to said, well, at the moment she's actually at his funeral.
Gee.
And that she knew that you would pick up on him. That's how much faith they had in me. So, and that's the kind of stuff that I write about in my book, because that's a behind the scenes Sensing Murder. But he tended to be the catalyst or the gateway for other spirits to come through. And after he was there, about 2 or 3 days later, there was a couple of other girls that happened to end up being Sensing Murder cases. And then after they came through, then there was about 3 more. And we actually had a whiteboard in the production office And I think at one stage we had 30 to 40 people
Whoa.
that were talking to me at any one time, and I had all their names up on the board and all the associated names with their cases, and split them up into little different, paragraphs and little different sections so that we could keep track of who they were. So even though on Sensing Murder, I think probably on the Australian version, I ended up doing 6 or 7 cases, there was actually probably in excess of 30 other cases that I stumbled into.
My goodness, that's incredible. Did you freak out any of the crew on this show?
Yes, we were actually we're filming the Carmen Ann case, and a long story cut as short as I possibly can, we left the production office in South Yarra and we're heading south down Chapel Street. And I had all along been very drawn to go out to the northeast side of Melbourne, but on this particular day I said, look, I don't know why, but I am wanting to go south. So I said, listen, this little, and I didn't know her name then, I just said, look, I've got this little Asian girl that's very keen for me to go northeast, and even though I'm still just seeing her face and feeling her energy, like a compass, I'm being drawn south. And the production crew said, well, look, we need to go where the ghosts want you to go, so let's go south. So we were heading down Chapel Street, which for anyone who's been to Melbourne, Australia, will know that Chapel Street is a very long street with lots of different shops and cafes and things, and it just seems to go forever. And we were a fair way down Chapel Street heading south, and I said, has a little boy gone missing from around here? And I had his middle name, what it turned out to be, and the name that I was saying nobody could recognise. And I said, well, look, leave that for now, but I've got this little boy, and I said he looks a bit like a young version of the kid who plays Harry Potter. So we get past that, and we end up down wherever I'm supposed to go down south, and all of a sudden I broke out in a huge sweat and just said, stop the van, and the camera was put down, and everyone there's 7 other people in the van with me, and they all piled out the van, and I was just absolutely saturated, because what had happened when we got to where I thought the little Asian girl was leading me to, another ghost actually stepped out from behind her and showed her face. And I suddenly realised that the reason why we weren't going northeast like I originally wanted to, and that we were being drawn south, was that it was the little girl standing behind the Asian girl that was actually leading us to where she'd been murdered, but that I was still only seeing the Asian girl's face. But when the other girl stood out, that's when I suddenly broke out into a sweat, and I'm standing there on the side of the road like as if someone had just thrown a bucket of water over me. And I said, listen, this is what's happened. This other little ghost has just stepped out from behind the little Asian girl. And I freaked the sound guy out so much that he never worked with me again after that day. He said, Scott's a really nice guy, but it freaks me out too much.
Gee.
And the little girl that stepped out from behind the Asian girl, I kept on picking up just my name all the time, and this is where it gets confusing. And I said, well, all I've got is the name Scott. Is there, I said, it's not me. Is there a Scott Park or a Scott Avenue or a Scott Building or a Scott Street or something to do with Scott near where we've pulled over? And there was, but of course the crew never tells you what it is. You have to find it. You have to figure it out. All I got was, yes, there is a Scott something. We will take you to near where that Scott something is. So we drive 5 minutes up the road. Once I'm dried out and the clothes are dry, we're back in the van. We go to where this Scott thing is, and I get out the van and walk up a few streets. No, energy wasn't very strong, so I follow the ghost energy back the other way, go around a corner, and guess what's there? Scott Street. I go up Scott Street, and I'm drawn to one particular house, and again, to cut the very long story short, the house that I ended up standing in front of was the house of a little girl called Eloise Warledge, who disappeared from her bed in 1976 and was never seen again. And she was the little blonde-headed girl that stepped out from behind the Asian girl, who later turned out to be Carmen Chan, who had disappeared from her bed in the northeastern suburbs of Melbourne.
Have you found that there's some sort of a consistency with ghosts who hang out together?
Yes, certainly. And I also felt perhaps there was a consistency in who had taken them, even though Eloise had disappeared in 76, and I think from memory Carmen disappeared in 92 or 93, so there's a few years difference, but the perpetrator could have been the same, but they were both about the same age, and Eloise was a couple of years younger. I think Carmen was 12 and Eloise was 8 or 9, but both had just gone to sleep one night, gone to bed, and were gone the next morning.
It sounds like an incredibly hard ask that the TV production crew are asking of you, because you're only doing this story with a birth date of a murdered person, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Plus 20 or so people talking in my head, with one of them standing forward the most. So on that day, the energy of the little Asian girl was the strongest, and her face had been there through a couple of the other cases that we had done previously, and I still didn't know her name, where I had known the names of some of the other cases that I'd worked on. So all I knew was that it was a little Asian girl. And that's the thing about the show, they are so extremely strict. They absolutely tell you nothing.
Well, I know the Skeptic Society has had a bit of a slap at this show, and even yourself, by saying, oh, well, you know, you can find out anything about any murder case if you look on the internet.
Exactly.
And I think that that's a pretty ridiculous statement.
Well, with all these cases, there is information on the internet about them now because of Sensing Murder being on. But as the producers of the New Zealand version of Sensing Murder will tell you, the Luana Williams case, which I filmed last year, there had been nothing on the internet about that for about 10 years, and was nothing on the internet about it in the years leading up to when we filmed the case. So even if we did know what it was or did want to film anything about it, there was nothing there to research anyway. Things like this are always then very easy to do in hindsight. It's very easy for the skeptics, once they know what the case is, to go, oh, well, you know, you can just go and look up the Eloise Warledge case on the internet, you'll find something. But that's when they know what it is. And with the testing procedure of Sensing Murder, and with what I was told, and has been the case, when I first joined up on the show, they said to me, the case that you're working on can be any case from anywhere in the world. You may go to Melbourne first, but you may be taken somewhere else. There is no guarantee that we will film in Melbourne. And when they did the audition process, there was no guarantee that the test cases were going to be Australian. And one of them wasn't. It was American. So again, in hindsight, once you know what the case is, people could say, oh, well, it'd be really easy to go research that case. But I would offer the challenge out to anyone who wanted to work on a case, if what the parameters were that the case that you needed to tune into was a case from anywhere in the world, see how long that takes you to find any case from anywhere in the world on the internet without knowing anything about it. It's impossible. Except if you've got a bit of spiritual help from the ghosts on the other side. That's the only way you can narrow it down. It's impossible to find out what it is otherwise. And even if it is just an Australian case, if you'd ever choose to look through the websites, of which there are numerous memorial websites, missing person websites, and information of people who have unfortunately been murdered, there's been thousands of people who have unfortunately passed in that way, you know, since Adam was a boy.
Yeah.
So it's again impossible to go, oh, well, it'll be this case. I mean, it's just impossible unless the people on the other side offer to give you a little bit of help. Otherwise, you'll just be going around and around in circles forever.
You mentioned that you went and did a case in New Zealand. Does that present any language barriers for you? I'm not meaning the New Zealand accent. I'm meaning
which one's difficult?
Maori names in New Zealand.
Yes. Well, there was actually what turned out to be a street and a suburb name that I had a great deal of difficulty with. And of course, when I do these cases, I say to the producers, listen, I don't want to dick anyone around. I don't want to bullshit anybody around, because the families have already been through enough grief. What I need to do is be as accurate as I can and try to bring a conclusion as quickly as possible. And with the Sarah McDermott case in Melbourne, she disappeared from a train station called Kannanook, I had a lot of difficulty with that Aboriginal name, trying to figure out what it was. Well, New Zealand was the same thing, and I had this name in my head. I knew that it was something like Otamuti or Otamutai, and it seemed like another ridiculous word that maybe meant something to their culture. And I actually spelt it out. I said, you know, this is how I reckon it is. And I can't exactly remember how I spelled it now, but it was a little bit phonetically, like O-T-O, Oto, M-O-O-T-I or O. I said it's either Oto-Mutai or Otamuti or something like that. But even when you're saying it, you think, God, this is ridiculous. This probably will mean nothing. It sounds so ridiculous. But there's actually a suburb and a road where the victim used to live called Otamutai.
And were you actually hearing it in your head, that word?
No, because then I would have said it just like I said it then. You know, if I was hearing Otamutai, I would have just said Otamutai, but I was just sort of getting the O2 up to there, and then I was trying to figure out the rest, but also get myself into a headspace of thinking where I would stop questioning what I felt was the stupidity of it and just get on with solving it. Because if, you know, as a regular person, I just go, no, look, Scott, this is ridiculous. You've completely lost the plot here. I have to erase all that kind of thought out of my mind. Otherwise, it just holds up the process even more. I mean, on the Sarah McDermott case in Melbourne, when the producer's father died, as I was talking about before, his name was actually Ronald. And when I got to Kannanook Station, I just could not get the name Ronald out of my head. And I thought, well, why are you thinking this still? It's her father. You know that you've solved that. Get off of it. But it wouldn't go away. And she was also standing behind the camera watching the show being produced. So I had to take a deep breath and say, look, I don't want to upset you, but I need to say that this name Ronald is still here, and it's not your father anymore. It's somebody else, and it's either Ron, Don, Ronnie, Donnie, Ronald, or Donald. And the gang members who used to hang around at the train station, as the private investigators found, there was a Ronnie and a Donnie in the gang who were at the train station on the night that Sarah died. But if I had in my head and on the day gone, no, look, I shouldn't even say this word anymore because it'll upset the producer who's standing behind the camera and you've already dealt with it, then we would have missed a valuable clue. So a big part of speaking to ghosts and being a psychic detective is to get all that kind of thinking out of my head, to not question anything that I think, to instinctively know that if something, a name, a word, a smell, a sound, a face, if it doesn't go away, that it means something.
What has the police reaction been to sensing murder?
That's an interesting question. To the older school of police, there has been no reaction, and certainly from the police who are in a position of power to do something, there's been no reaction. Their position is that they do not utilise the services of psychics or clairvoyants. The younger policemen that are coming through my seminars, who come up to speak to me after the seminar is over, they certainly are more open-minded and saying to me, listen, we really hope one day that the police will take much more notice of you. The Illawarra police in New South Wales did at one stage approach me and a couple of other psychics to see if we were interested to work on a case that they were open to the possibility that we could help. But I wasn't able to follow through on that at the time because I was working on sensing murder, and certainly you can't take any more than one case on at a time because of all the difficulties of trying to sort out the information that's coming across from the ghosts. The Melbourne police, as far as I know, are pretty much against it, as are the South Australian police. I understand that the Western Australian police did ask some clairvoyants' opinion on the Claremont case, and I would say probably that the Queensland police are a little more open to it. But with regard to all the cases that we worked on sensing murder, where we actually came up with, we came up with clues, and the private investigators then verified the clues, particularly that I gave, where I actually tuned into police forensic evidence that actually existed and said, well, that's your missing key, and they found that I overlooked a piece of evidence. Still nothing has happened. So it seems unfortunate then that the police, on the levels of those who can make the decision, are still not taking us seriously, or taking me seriously.
Because you've had a couple of stories in Woman's Day in regards to the Beaumont children, and you're saying that you've got a pretty solid, multiple pieces of evidence.
Yep.
And have you heard anything back from the South Australian police on that?
Not a word.
Does that surprise you?
No. If you want to know the future, look to the past. If there's been silence up to now, there'll be silence in the future until other things change. But my feelings on what happened to the Beaumont children and other cases is all in part of what's in my fifth book. So I lay it all out in the open in that book, and if there's anything that's going to stir things up or make people take notice or at least question the possibility, it will be what's in my book, because what I come up with is completely different to what anybody else ever has, and a private investigator has thoroughly investigated all of my clues and come up with actual people, locations, places, and the most likely scenario of what happened to those three children.
Well, I can't wait to read your fifth book, but we'll just have to take a little break now, and we'll be back very soon on Ghost Radio with Scott Russel Hill.
Ghost Radio. Great interviews, edge news, top hits, ghosts and UFOs. You know, the stuff the other guys won't touch. Even chupacabras. Listen to Ghost Radio.
Welcome back. Scott, there's a lot of fear out there about ghosts. I mean, people think that, you know, they've got evil spirits in their house and that spooks and ghosts can hurt them, which is pretty much what Hollywood is pushing out to us. What's your call on this?
I can only answer that, Den, from my own experience, and having worked in this area for as often and as long as I have, and having so much contact with people on the other side. I have never come to any harm for anybody and from anybody on the other side. I believe that we create fear and those kind of bad energies ourselves, and that we can attract bad energy ourselves through creating it ourselves. Once people pass over, no matter who they are, they go through a transition called magnificent healing. As far as I'm concerned, they did not get lost or trapped or whatever. I feel that that's made up from people on this side of the spectrum, and that they go across on the other side, see what they did or didn't work through in this lifetime and go, oh shit, I didn't do that, and I set up that task this time and I still didn't get it done. Well, I have to go back and do it again. And then they take their place beside us in what's called magnificent healing. I mean, I've been told the most horrific stories, you know, where mothers have come to me for readings whose children have suicided, and they've been told that their child is stuck in a certain dimension or haunting their house or walking the planet lost and all this. That's just not my perspective. And I think whether it's ghosts or any part of the New Age, that people can get quite immersed in being delusioned and making things up and becoming quite emotional over matters that aren't there. But again, I think the biggest key is we create the negativity, we create bad things that are around us, because everything is energy. But as far as evil spooks, evil energies, sure, there has to be a positive and negative to things, but we can pull it in, we create it, we manifest it. If there's somebody in your house, have a chat to them. You know, that there's no one there that's there to hurt you. And if things fall off the shelf or something flies around the room, that person really wants you to take notice of them. So rather than treat it as an evil energy or something bad, you just stand there and go, hello, look, okay, I notice you. What is it that you want to tell me? Rather than go, get out of my house, you scare me, you frighten me, you're perpetuating the fear then. But I have never, in all my years of working on this level, have encountered anything evil, anything nasty, anything that's destructive or bad. The people on the other side that I have encountered, while they may not always be talkative, while they may not always tell me everything that I want to hear straight away, that I have to work out most of it, the energy from them is totally loving, totally peaceful. Yes, they want to get messages through to their loved ones, but in no way are they doing it in any bad way. And the other thing too, a couple of ways to look at it, is that the spiritual world and the physical world coexist and mix and mingle 24/7 anyway. So there's no point in being fearful about it. Even when you're not thinking about it, they're around you. So you might as well just accept the reality and get on with it. And as far as I'm concerned, it's scarier to go out and get in your car and drive on the road and put up with all the dickheads who drive on the road and cut you off and don't indicate and all the road rage. That's the scarier process. I'm sure we've all encountered road rage and bad drivers a lot more than we'd ever encounter anything that should be perceived negative from spirit. But from my own personal experience, as I've never encountered it, bad spirits and evil and all that kind of stuff is not a reality that I entertain. As far as those on the other side go, I've always found them to be totally loving, totally embracive of nothing but positivity and just wanting to support the people who are here on this side.
Do you find that people who have crossed over have communicated to you in any sort of a dream?
They do. Not as often as I'd like, but again, even if they do, then they don't always tell me anything. So whether it's in a dream or face-to-face, or I just hear things, it's either like the broken mobile phone signal or it's a direct conversation.
So how can you tell the difference between a communication sort of a thing happening in your dream and just a crazy dream?
Because what they say is absolutely specific, and I'll wake up immediately. Like, I don't go on into the dream and then go off to other things. I'll actually wake up and go, oh, okay, that's what that is. So I'll immediately return from the dream state and acknowledge in my head what is actually going on. If I should stay in the dream a bit longer and it gets into things that aren't related to it at all, I just tend to have like a natural discerning button within me, like a fail-safe system that knows the difference between what's just a few radical, stupid dreams with pink elephants flying around with glasses of champagne and what's a direct message.
Because you've dreamt some pretty amazing predictions over the years. Things like September 11 and, Bali terrorism.
Yep.
Do you get supported by that in your real life, as well as, the dream state that you're in, to kind of build up the evidence to know that you're on the right track with a prediction?
Well, if we use September 11 and Bali, well, even Princess Diana as an example, what I had with Princess Diana was I had a dream that I saw the cover of a Woman's Day, and at that stage she was on the cover almost every week, and in the dream she wasn't on the cover. There was just a photo of France. And within the dream, I actually said to myself, Princess Diana isn't on the cover, what's wrong with her? She must be dead. And I woke up from that and just felt so bad at even thinking about that, because I had actually spoken to her on a few occasions at the time. So I'd had that personal contact, so it was almost like I was talking about her behind her back. And I felt terribly guilty for thinking that. So within the dream, I didn't actually see the car accident or anything. That gradually came, like after I'd had that initial dream, then other thoughts and feelings would just come in my waking hours, to the point where I did actually warn her about Paris and not breaking her security protocol. But as we all have free will, of course, she made her own decisions, and we all know the rest. With September 11, the dream was solid up to the point where I saw people running from the buildings. I saw the buildings on fire. I knew that there was fire in the buildings, but when I woke up and thought about it and was trying to figure out what was going on, the closest I thought of what had happened was that a missile had struck the building, that a plane had flown by or someone had launched a missile from a ship, and that the buildings had been hit by missiles, because it never occurred to me, because we're going back maybe 13, 14 years ago that I initially had that dream. I never would think for a moment that a plane would hit the building, and because looking at those buildings from a distance, you don't realise how tall they were and how big they were. I mean, they were massive, and to look at them from a distance and think, well, that's a 737 or a 767 Airbus that's flown into the building, it just seems impossible. So I never did figure out what had hit the building there. I just knew eventually that it would happen. And with Bali, I just saw a lot of fire and devastation, and initially thought that perhaps the area had been hit by either a bomb or an earthquake. After the initial unfortunate incident in Bali, and I was on the Kerry Ann show and we were talking about it, and I said to her, it's still not safe. All I knew then, I never had a dream or a ghost never gave me further information. I just knew instinctively that Bali still wasn't safe and that people shouldn't go there. And of course, the bombs went off there, the second round of bombs went off.
Apparently you stopped people from going to Bali because you felt that strongly about it.
Yes, the people that were coming to my seminars, that was 12 months ago, they were all very interested in world predictions and what I thought safe places were, and a number of people were still enjoying going to Bali. And I said to them, well, look, I just wouldn't be going there. It's not safe. I don't particularly know when it's going to happen. All I can tell you is that it is still not safe. And there was one that comes to mind in particular was a girl that came to the Melbourne seminar. She was getting married a few months later, and she and her husband were then going to be going to Bali to have their wedding reception. And they were going to have their wedding reception at the restaurant where the bomb went off.
Really?
She ended up having a huge fight with him because she'd been to the Scott Russel Hill seminar. And
Ooh.
I said it wasn't safe to go, and he said, what a lot of bullshit, and will you ever stop listening to that kind of garbage? But she put her foot down and they didn't go, and he's since had a reading with me. It was an interesting way for him to
have another quick short break and we'll be back very soon with Scott Russel Hill.
They're watching. But you know that. Ghost Radio.
Scott, I've been speaking to quite a few people who, and you've talked a little bit about this before, that they might have some sort of a fantasy that their house has got a bad energy. I even have a group of friends who paid $400 to an American Indian to smudge their house.
Fabulous.
And after the Indian did that, they weren't even sure if it helped. So what do you do if your house has got a bad energy?
Light some really nice white candles, burn some really nice incense, and put out your own positive vibe. Just forget about the fear, because fear is a useless commodity, because whether you're fearful or not, whatever is around you in spirit will still be there. Acknowledge that it's there, say hello to it, and as I've been telling a friend of mine who's just found out that he's got a lady ghost in his apartment, I'm saying to him, well, have a chat to her, find out what she wants, because she's toppling a few things over in his place, but she's also smelling of perfume. And he said, and he travels the world a lot, and he's a hairdresser, so he gets to mix with the rich and socialites. He actually identifies that she's wearing a particular perfume that's only sold in Beverly Hills.
Gee.
So what it's doing in Adelaide, South Australia, we don't know. So we're trying to figure out what this spirit is, but she's getting a little bit testy. So if he wasn't of such a sound body and mind, he would view her as an evil spirit, because she's been toppling a few things over. But his attitude is, no, I want to find out who she is, whether I'm in bed or walking up the stairs, I suddenly smell this perfume and I know what that perfume is. So he's getting some synchronicity there. She's not from his apartment because it's a new apartment, and she may have perhaps lived in the house that was there before they knocked it down and built the apartments. But he'll figure out who she is, but he's got the right attitude. So he's burning the incense, he's lighting the candles, he doesn't have any fear, and he's saying that, look, you're more than welcome, just let me know what you want. And I think for anyone who has a ghost in the house, that's what you want to do, that you perpetuate the fear yourself and perpetuate the bad energy yourself. The bad energy is not coming from the person in spirit, the bad energy is actually your own fear. And sitting on my side of the fence, having done readings and seminars for so many years and seeing the way that people think, it's more likely 99.9% of the time that the person is creating all of the bad energy rather than spirit. And my experience is that, as I said before, that the most that a spirit will do is they might knock something over, or something might fly past your head, or all of a sudden you might smell some shit. If that's what they want to get your attention, that's what they'll do. They're just trying to get your attention. The ongoing theme through all of this is that they do have difficulty in speaking to us. They speak in broken sentences or send us signs or symbols. And some spirits do amass so much energy that while they can't talk to you, they can move objects or make you smell something or hear something. So all they're doing is getting used to their energy on the other side and doing whatever they can to get your attention. So that's what it's all about. The rest of it is how we interpret it. But lighting the incense, white candles, the flame of the candle represents the soul. Of course, the white candle is purity and spirit and peace. If you want to do some healing on the house and help the spirit to talk to you, you should light a green candle because that's very healing, or a purple candle because that's the real real colour of spirit. So either a white, green or purple candle, but just speak out loud to it. Hiding in a corner and pretending it's not there will do you nothing and just perpetuates the fear. But you also cannot cleanse houses and do all that because spirits have got a mind of their own. We've got no more control over the spirit world than we do over the bloody weather. So spending $400 to get someone to come and douse your house or fart in the right-hand corner of the western room to clear something, it's all a waste of time. Your journey, they're presenting themselves to you for a reason, and you might be trying to, in inverted commas, get rid of someone who's from your family tree who all they're trying to do is get a message across to you, because that's most likely what the case is. or it could be your best friend who's passed, or it could be Auntie May who you weren't alive when she was alive, but she's been hanging around in spirit waiting for you to be born and grow up so that she can, look after you while you're an adult. So we certainly don't want to spend time getting rid of or being negative towards spirits who are trying to do good. And that's where people need to grow up a little bit emotionally themselves, not be so dramatic, take control of the situation, accept that the spiritual world exists around us all the time, that ghosts are there all the time, and talk to them.
That's fantastic advice.
Good.
And
well, common sense has gotten me a long way. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, sticking up for myself and trying to be a role model, to look at things realistically and down to earth, I would not be able to do the work that I do, or have the communication that I have, or have the proven success track record that I have if what I was saying was not true. That's how I live my life. That's how I speak to spirits. I don't have this fear. I've never had these bad experiences. All I have is spirits communicating to me. And so what I've just told you on what to do, I light the candles. I light the incense. When I pick up on someone, I go say, well, good day. How you going? Will you all stop talking at once and just let one person talk? I do exactly what I've just told other people to do, and that's how I have found success. So there must be something to what I'm saying, because it works for me.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. It's really good. I know a lot of people will get a lot out of that.
Well, again, you've got to accept the fact that some people won't, because it's not what they want to hear. They want to hear something different, from their lifestyle. Maybe their dog sat on their face when they were young and all they can smell is dog fur all the time, and it's a bad experience. So now the spirits, the ghosts, are making them smell dog fur, because that's how they initially want to make communication, but they don't want that to be a good experience, because when they were a child they didn't like it. So people will deliberately interpret things or make more of things than they need to, and that's when they don't grow spiritually. Spirituality is simple. People are complicated. The less complicated you look at the ghost world, the less complicated and the less fear that you use to communicate with the ghost world, the more success you will have in receiving messages. That's what's worked for me.
This is something else that a lot of people have asked me about, and you might be able to help out here.
I'll try.
Yeah, I know you're pretty good at this. Seeing flashes of light in the corner of a room. I've even had a friend who's a nurse who wanted to take herself in for a CAT scan because she thought that she was getting like a brain tumour.
Well, there's another situation where she'd be wasting her money. She might as well solve a cat, hold onto a cash and buy herself a cappuccino.
So what is it?
The flashing, it's spiritual light. It's, again, ghosts letting you know that they're there, and you just catch a glimpse of their flashing spiritual energy out the corner of your eye, or all of a sudden there'll just be a flash of light. It, simply put, is spiritual energy. They're just letting you know that they're there, and that's the most common way that, shall we, in inverted commas again, say normal everyday people see spiritual energy. A bit like a strobe light, can be quite bright, can be just a flash out the corner of your eye, or all of a sudden there could be this quiet, like someone's put a flashlight off in your face. That's just a spirit who has a higher energy. The spirits that have less energy and are unable to flash, brightly, you'll see them out the corner of your eye. But a spirit that is adapting to the ghost world and is able to show you their energy stronger, you'll see a brighter flash. But again, it's nothing to be scared of.
And what sort of advice do you give to parents who've got children who start seeing things like that and saying that they're seeing ghosts?
Encourage them, tell them what a beautiful experience it is. Don't be scared of it. And usually the kids will say, oh, I'm not. It's usually the adults that are scared if they're in the wrong mindset. Kids don't have any fear until they're taught to be fearful. So tell them what a wonderful experience it is. Tell them, it's probably, Uncle Bobby from Spirit, or if it's not, you'll figure out who it is, and encourage them. It will open up their intuition. And certainly, especially children who have been born from 1999 onwards, are incredibly spiritually gifted and have a huge amount of humanitarian qualities in their profiles. So there's many children who have been born in recent years who are on a very natural level, very attuned to spirit. Why that is, I don't know, but it's certainly a reality that I've seen.
No, I certainly know a lot of parents who would certainly agree with you there.
Mm.
Do you think that with your psychic abilities, the older you get, the better you get?
I'd like to think so.
But you're such a young man,
Yes, yes. Look, I think we get better at things if we choose to. And I've certainly made it my goal to improve and to challenge myself in different ways. And that's what I'm doing. So, yes, I would probably... I don't know if I want to say the word better, though, Jen. I think I've always done what I've done well. I just do a greater variety of what I've always done. So I think I've always done it good. I just think I do a lot of different things now. Readings, doing predictions, psychic detective work, seeing ghosts, all of that. From the time I was a kid, no matter what I've done, I've always done it to the best that I could. So I just think I've got an expanded portfolio of talent.
You most certainly have.
I always like to word things the way that I really feel. So that's the way that I look at it. Yeah.
Well, you're not backward at coming forward, but you kind of like that in your readings, I've heard, that you call a spade a spade.
Yeah, I do, because it doesn't help anybody if I don't.
I know that you're pretty booked up most of the time, but if people do want to get a reading through you, what do they do?
They can do two things. They can go to scottrusselhill.com.au, go to the reading section of my website and just follow the prompts. There's also a phone number on my website that they can call and speak to my fantastic assistant Kirsten, who will actually book them in. So it's an easy process. Probably the easiest thing is to go through scottrusselhill.com.au because everything's there.
And the way that you do readings is a little bit different to most psychic people. Can you just give us a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, I kick people's asses.
Okay. But there are things that they should do and that they should not do.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they shouldn't tell you to sort of just, tell me what you think.
Oh, well, they'll be out the door quick as a flash. I'll be offering them their money back. They want to do that.
Well, what sort of questions, do you answer in a reading?
Well, a reading is about me empowering the person to make more informed decisions and choices. I am not here to tell them whether they're going to split up with their boyfriend or tell them what they should be doing tomorrow, because that takes away a person's free will. And unfortunately, people become so insecure with life that they want someone else to answer all the questions for them. They want someone else to tell them when they should do something or what they should do, so that if it doesn't turn out, they can turn around and say, oh, he told me to do this and he was wrong. So people, number one, need to empower themselves. And when they come to me for a reading, I will give them my best advice. I will suggest times, dates, places and cycles they can work for. If they're, for example, wanting a change of career, I will tell them what career I think that they would be better at, what their options are, whether they should stay at their job for now or when they should apply for their job, what areas that they should be less advised to go towards and what they'd be better advised to go for. Then that leaves the decision up to them. So again, a reading for me, I'm not just going to sit there. If people say, I just want a general reading, they won't get one. I just do not do them. I haven't done that for years, because a general reading is nothing more than entertainment. Then they all get together over a coffee afterwards and go, oh, well, he told me this and somebody 3 years ago told me that. That's just, go hire a movie, watch Steel Magnolias, that's entertainment. If somebody is really serious about getting their life together, finding dates, times, places, cycle, and spiritual opinion that will help empower them to make a better choice in their life, within their relationship, within their career, within their spirituality, where they're going and what they're doing, then I'm the person to come and have a reading with. No one should ever go to a reading asking or hoping that someone will answer or make the decisions for them. You're seeking spiritual advice and guidance from which you will make your own decisions. And some people don't like that. They sit there with their arms crossed and get a bit huffy because I don't do readings the way they want me to. But I don't do much the way that people want me to. I do it the way that I want to, because the way that I do it has proved to be of most benefit to people. And certainly, I read for such a wide cross-section of people, from multi-millionaires down to people who clean, the toilets at Westfield. I treat everybody the same. I don't break the rules for anybody. If you want to have a reading with me, come with set questions, things you want to improve your life on, and I will give you my best advice to help you. But ultimately, as with everything in life, whether you're having a reading or sorting out your life in different ways, the ultimate decision of what you do, no matter who advises you, is yours.
Very good advice. With seminars, people sometimes think that they might get a reading out of the seminars, and that's seriously not the case. And I know you're planning to do a few more this year.
Mm-hmm.
So whereabouts would people be able to see you at a seminar?
I'm touring the entirety of Australia in September, October when the 5th book comes out. So I'll be starting at Darwin and going down through Cairns, Townsville, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, down through New South, Newcastle, Sydney, Canberra, even Tassie.
Wow.
Over to Perth, and then winding up in Adelaide. So it'll be a tour then. But again, yes, I don't do readings at my seminars, and I've always advertised them that way. Because if you do, if you've got a couple of hundred people sitting there and the lady in the corner just wants you to talk about her life and her cousins and her nephews and her husband who won't get off his arse and do anything, it's boring for everybody else to sit there and listen to that.
Absolutely.
So I've always advertised my seminars like that. There's been a few people who've come along and cracked the shits because, we thought you'd be doing readings and blah, 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 to which they've been told, well, it wasn't advertised that way. And I'm very cautious the way I advertise my seminars on radio and TV and all the magazines. It said he is not doing readings. It is a psychic seminar which is there to offer opinion, where we talk about a cross-section of subjects which are of interest to everyone. So again, that you can walk away from the day and empower yourself with whatever you want, that whether you take a little away from the day or a lot, that something on that day will help you, again, make better choices and decisions in your life. And my seminars always involve everyone. I mean, it's like a big family gathering, and we just have a lot of fun. And we talk about a lot of things, and people like to talk about ghosts and sensing murder and, psychic experiences, but experiences that are of interest to everyone, just not particular to one person. And I think that's important. Otherwise, even I'd get bored. I've been to a few seminars in the past where someone's, been reading for someone or tuning into ghosts for someone, and it's quite boring after half an hour just sitting there, just quietly listening. You want to be involved, and with my seminars, I structure it in such a way that people are absolutely involved.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people around Australia are looking forward to that.
Well, it's all going to be on the website. There's a touring section at scottrussellhill.com.au, and as the dates and locations are available, they'll get posted a couple of months ahead of time, and how people can get tickets. But as soon as the 5th book is released on Psychic Detective Work, I'll be touring to promote the book and to meet up with everyone.
Fantastic. Scott, thank you so much for talking to us today on Ghost Radio.
Pleasure.
I wish you all the absolute success that you deserve in your latest book.
Thanks, Dan.
You're listening to Ghost Radio.
paranormal to this world and the next. We are Ghost Radio.